The dawn of Project 2029, a presidential pen unleashed. And so it began. The year is 2029. A new Democratic president, Anya Sharma, has just been sworn in. Yes, President Sharma campaigned on bold action now, with lots of exclamation points. And boy, oh boy, was she about to deliver on the bold part. The nation held its breath, or at least those who weren't too busy doom-scrolling on their phones. Then came Project 2029. This wasn't just a gentle nudge in a new direction, oh no, this was a full-pelt sprint, a cannonball dive into the deep end of policy change. President Sharma, armed with a seemingly inexhaustible supply of executive orders, set to work. Pens scribbled, documents were stamped, decrees were issued. It was a veritable blizzard of directives, an avalanche of initiatives. Think of it as Oprah, but instead of giving away cars, President Sharma was handing out federal mandates. You get a regulation, and get a regulation. The reactions? Well, they were immediate and, shall we say, spirited. Progressive groups were ecstatic. Moderates, bless their cautious hearts, adopted a wait-and-see approach. Project 2029 was a statement. The year was still young, but one thing was crystal clear. The political roller coaster was just leaving the station, and buckle up, buttercups, because it was going to be a wild ride. First up on the executive order, hit parade the climate emergency declaration. That's right, Anne, because in case you hadn't noticed, the planet was getting a tad toasty. President Sharma's order wasn't just a suggestion, it was a full-throated call to arms, aiming to mobilize the entire government to fight climate change. Blue states and environmental activists basically threw a party. Red states, especially those whose economies were rather fond of fossil fuels, were, to put it mildly, less enthused. Then came the green contractor standards. Suddenly, companies across the nation were scrambling to figure out what sustainability actually meant beyond just recycling their printer cartridges. The debate wasn't just about regulations, it was about two fundamentally different visions for the future, with the poor, overheating planet caught in the middle, probably sweating profusely. Next on President Sharma's to-do list, which was clearly longer than a CVS receipt, were orders concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. These executive actions aim to overhaul federal hiring practices, implement widespread sensitivity training, and generally ensure that the government looked a lot more like the actual population of the country. Progressive organizations and civil rights groups were, understandably, thrilled. However, not everyone was ready to join the Kumbaya circle. Conservatives and some business leaders sounded the alarm bells loud and clear. Reverse discrimination, they cried. Woke indoctrination, they thundered. The airwaves filled with dire predictions of unqualified people getting jobs solely based on their identity, while merit, that wonderfully flexible concept, was supposedly being tossed out the window like yesterday's garbage. The only thing everyone could agree on was that they felt very, very strongly about, well, everything. Section 4. Borders, books, and bucks. Immigration and education under the microscope. Then, President Sharma turned her executive pen towards the ever-contentious issue of immigration. New orders were signed, aiming to streamline the asylum process, offering potential new pathways to legal status, and generally signaling a more welcoming stance from the United States. Immigrant rights advocates and many humanitarian groups were, of course, overjoyed. Red states, particularly those along the southern border, reacted with predictable alarm. And let's not forget the students, or, more accurately, their loans. Project 2029 rolled out several student loan forgiveness pilot programs. Critics, however, immediately started asking the multi-trillion-dollar question, this is great, but who's footing the bill? Education itself wasn't spared from the whirlwind of executive actions. The classroom once again became a battleground for the soul of the nation. Section 5. The Great Pushback and the Road Ahead. Lawsuits, party poopers, and a nation dizzy from change. Now, you didn't seriously think all these sweeping executive orders would go unchallenged, did you? Of course not. This is America, where if you don't like something the government does, you sue. And sue they did. Red state attorneys general, practically chomping at the bit, filed lawsuits faster than you can say amicus brief. The nation's courthouses suddenly became the hottest new political arenas, with judges finding themselves in the uncomfortable glare of the national spotlight. The courts, in their infinite wisdom and with their lifetime appointments, delivered a mixed bag of rulings. Some of President Sharma's orders were promptly put on hold by injunctions, sending waves of elation through conservative circles and howls of frustration from progressives. Other orders managed to survive the initial legal onslaught, leading to cheers from the administration's supporters and vows from opponents to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, if necessary. It was a dizzying game of legal ping-pong, and the only clear winners were the lawyers, who were presumably upgrading their vacation homes. The nation was undeniably energized, but also more polarized than ever, if that was even possible. This AI thought experiment of a presidency had certainly proven one thing. Executive orders, when wielded with such ambition, could indeed create a storm.